Hello, and welcome to the John Burt Leadership Podcast. If you're listening to this podcast, most likely you're interested in setting new goals for yourself, fueled by your intense desire to enhance your leadership skills. You're looking to navigate the disruptive changes that you face every day, and you want to become a more inspiring leader and have greater influence. I'm your host, John Burt, an executive leadership coach. My aim is to provide you with new insights and a fresh perspective on leadership through conversations with incredible guests sharing our thoughts, ideas, and experiences on leadership. My hope is that this will enable you to continue to grow, adapt, and become a more impactful leader, ultimately contributing to making your organization and the world a better place. So let's dive in. Today's episode is Mastering Goals, a guide to effective goal setting and maintaining focus. Every year, individuals set goals for themselves, both personal and professional. The personal goals might include to lose weight or to exercise more. They might include less screen time or endless scrolling on social media for their dopamine hit. On the professional side, leaders set goals for growth and development for themselves, but also their teams and organizations. Leaders may want to master a new competency or become more inspiring. Organizations may want to improve their culture and employee engagement, just to name a few. Despite the benefits to be achieved, many of these goals evaporate or are no longer a priority soon after they're set. A recent study of individuals setting New Year's resolutions indicated that 77% of the respondents maintained their pledges for 1 week, but only 19% were still setting the same goals, were still adhering to the same goals after 2 years. So what causes this discrepancy? Well, today you'll find out, and you'll learn how to master effective goal setting and how to maintain that focus over the long term. My guest today is Al Fragnoli, a successful executive leadership coach and business owner. Listen in as we explore how to set goals and what you need to consider to achieve them. Hey, and welcome to today's episode of the John Burt Leadership Podcast. I've got a great episode for you today. It's all going to be about goals, goal setting, as well as the techniques and strategies for how to maintain those goals over time. I have a fantastic guest with me, a good friend of mine, Al Fragnoli. Welcome, Al.
John, thank you so much for bringing me on. Love what you're doing. Known you for a couple of years now. Absolutely love chatting leadership and goals with you. So I'm looking forward to having an awesome discussion with you here today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here, Al. I know this is going to be great for our audience, and I really appreciate you being willing to do this as well and share some of your knowledge and insights. I know you, Al, because we've been friends for a while. But I do want to share a little bit of your background, just so our audience gets a better feel for who you are. Al, he graduated from Wayne State University and Central Michigan University. When he was at Central Michigan, he worked in the school's athletic department, mentoring student athletes and helping them to transition from high school to college life. He completed his Master's of Arts in Sports Administration in 2012. He spent some time working as a sales intern for the Buffalo Bisons. Now, if you don't know the Buffalo Bisons, right, it's a AAA baseball club that's associated with the Toronto Blue Jays. And then from there, he went on to work for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So very much into the sports area. Al spent a season working as associate area scout for the Toronto Blue Jays, working in the Central Florida region. He then spent 7 years of his career working as a sales executive for Miller Coors Distributor. And in 2021, he and his wife, Tina, embarked on a new business ownership. They actually own two businesses, one which is Apex Leadership, which is working with local elementary schools on teaching leadership and character building lessons while helping them to raise money. And the other is he's an executive leadership coach. So, I think this all really ties into his passion for giving back. And I know, Al, you've set some goals in your life. And I'm really interested in your process of the goal setting. But let's start, Al, with this question about what are goals, right? What are people hear about goals and objectives and New Year's resolutions? So help me to define what goals are and what are the benefits.
Yeah, John, I think goals, it really, they simply come down to something that we're striving for, something that has a meaning in our lives, whether it be on a personal level or obviously professionally. But goals are something that we're striving for over a period of time, right?
Mhm,
So when I look at goals, I look at them being aligned with our values and things that are important to us,
mhm.
and that we really strive toward a standard that we're setting to achieve um, over a process over a period of time.
That's beautiful. I recently spoke to a client, and I was asking right after the first of the year, have you set any resolutions for yourself? And he said, well, I'm not really a resolutions kind of person. He goes, but I am a goals type of person. I set goals for myself. So we did dig into this idea of, are resolutions something that's more immediate, short-term goals versus, goals that you might have for yourself, which is that extended period of time and might be considered aspirational in a way, right? And you mentioned both personal and professional goals. We're going to talk a little bit about both of those because we're talking to a group of leaders today. But what do you see as the key difference between personal and professional goals?
Yeah, that's a really interesting take there, John. I think so many people start off the new year and say they want to change something, right? That, to me, that's a resolution. You want to change something about you. And at the end of the day, usually after a couple weeks, a month at most, those resolutions, they fade away, right? And typically because they don't have purpose behind them. So I think that the difference really between a resolution and a goal is a resolution is something you want to change about yourself. Goal is something that you want to accomplish, and it needs a
Mhm.
process.
That's beautiful. Honestly, I really like that. And then the benefits of goals, right? There's a lot of different benefits that you can um, identify for goals. I was working with a team recently, and we were developing their strategic plan, no less. And one of the members of our committee that we were working with started off the conversation by saying, "Well, I don't believe in goals." I'm thinking, well, that's a bold statement when you're working on your strategic plan. In fact, there's a lot of people have different understanding of what goals mean, but also what the real intent behind goals are. One of the key things that I've seen that I really like is this idea that goals, that it's directional, it's aspirational, right? It's not the endpoint.
Absolutely. And there's really so many, to me, there's so many benefits behind goals. I think productivity increases when you have the right goals in place. You have a clear focus on what you're striving to accomplish, and
Mm-hmm.
it gives you direction. But there are so many increased benefits when people strive towards the goal that they've set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And of course, it helps you with that setting the priorities as well when you're in an organization, especially. But even in your personal life, you can set priorities in terms of what is the most important goal that you have if there is a trade-off to be made in terms of time or resource.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to get to this area that you mentioned briefly there, and that's the reason why, right? So the foundation of goal setting, right? In my mind, is about that mission or purpose, your why associated with why you want to do it. So what do you think? What do you think in terms of the who? I want to have you expand on your earlier thought.
Yeah, so this part really is something I'm really passionate about, John. And the reason why is when I think about goals, I think a lot of people, if they don't know why they're striving towards that goal, they're going to end up falling short and they're going to get frustrated. But if they have a clear vision, if they understand the mission and the vision of why they're creating a goal, um, and they understand their why behind it, it has to really speak to their heart and soul, right? And
Hmm.
and if they have that clear cut why, they're more likely to to accomplish that goal over time. And they're more likely, especially for a long-term goal, they're more likely to stay on track and stay focused over time to do the processes and have the discipline that they need day in, day out to hit that goal. Um,
Yeah.
I want to share something with you, John, real quick. I did a little bit of research here. Obviously, you've known me for a couple of years. You know, Tom Brady is a big. I'm a big fan of Tom Brady, and I love people that are committed to excellence. They might not be the greatest athlete or the best in the world, but they do some things really well. Tom Brady he has the TB12 method. That's his brand, so to speak. And his mission is to empower athletes everywhere to do what he's done in his own storied career. He wants people to keep going despite the odds against them. And he wants to help athletes improve longevity, prevent injury, to stay on the field, court, track, or course, doing what they love for a longer period of time. And to me,
Mhm.
that's why Tom Brady's brand, why he's been successful with his business, why he was successful on the football field and considered one of the best of all time. Not the greatest athlete in the world, but he understood his why he was doing what he wanted to do, and he was able to do it at a higher standard than really anybody else. And I think that when we focus on that why, we can really achieve great things.
Yeah. Well, it gives you that energy and that passion to really dive into something because it's connecting to something that's very emotionally charged for yourself. Or in an organizational setting, it could be that North Star that helps that helps to guide the organization so that 6 months down the road you've got a tough choice to make. How do you look back at that mission and purpose, or the strategic plan you've set at the beginning of the year, and is it congruent? Right? Are you operating and are you consistent with those values? And that can give you a lot of power and energy and the conviction for towards your goals.
It is, and John, that's a great point too. When you're striving towards the goal, and you mentioned there that let's say you've been working on a goal for 6 to 9 months or so, right? And you're going to have your bumps in the road, but what keeps you going? What keeps you fighting and getting up every single day to strive towards that goal? It's really the conviction that you have behind it. If that
Mhm.
goal is truly important to you and to your values and your beliefs and who you are as a person, you will keep fighting towards that goal. The
Yeah.
people that fall short are the ones that don't really have that why ironed out with the goal that they've set.
Yeah, I think about just simple. A lot of people start the beginning of the year saying that you're gonna exercise more, right? But they haven't connected it to why are they exercising more? Do they see themselves? Is their mission to be a healthy person, to live a healthy lifestyle? And if that may be the passion, and they see themselves as who they want to be, right? Who they want to be, like a healthy person, and somebody who has energy all the time, that can lead to it. And so in the days that you wind up not running or not exercising or not taking that walk around the block, you really want to get back on the bike because you see yourself, you're striving towards something that is very personal, very well connected to you. I think the same thing is true in business. When the clients that I work with, and we do a lot of work as coaches, right? Getting people connected to their why or their reason or their core purpose. A lot of different words that people use for it, but what's important to you, right? As a person, who do you want to be? How do you want to be remembered as an individual? And what are your values? What are your core and your ultimate values that are guiding you in your life? That can be a really powerful exercise for people. But if you can connect the goal to that, then it's like atomic in a way.
Yeah, that's critically important. I really think you nailed it, John. I mean, at the end of the day, again, if you can connect your core values, your core purpose, as you mentioned, your beliefs, your values, if you connect that why to each and every goal that you set, you're going to stay connected with that goal. You're going to stay on the process of doing the actions that you need to do every day to achieve that goal. I think
Okay.
you.
Well, there's a book that is pretty current right now. It's called Atomic Habits, and it's by James Clear. And you read this over the holidays, and people have been asking me to read it for a while. But it's just this idea of, do you focus on the goal or do you focus on the structure and the process? Um, you know, from my management consulting days, I think that you do have to focus on the process. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to get one-off results. I do think that the goal that you have can still, these can coexist. You can have a goal, but you can also think about what are those habits or what's the process that's going to lead to you getting to that goal.
Yeah, and again, I'll go back to the sports analogy that I'll do here. You hear some of the greatest teams, the greatest coaches always talk about focusing on the process. Forever, you heard Bill Belichick when he was winning Super Bowls with the Patriots always talk about stay committed to the process. So the goal, the end goal is win Super Bowl, right? Obviously, the end goal is to win the Super Bowl, but it's about what you're doing 9 months before the Super Bowl even happens to get you in a position to even have a chance to compete for a Super Bowl. And that's the same for any sort of business. Is if you have a goal that's a year out down the road, you've got to focus on those habits as talked about in that book to really have a chance to set yourself up to be successful. It's not a guarantee that you're going to be successful, but it's going to put yourself in the best position to have success.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. There's no guarantee. But again, there's another element of that book which I really liked. It was this idea of the ice cube on the table, right? That you might be sitting in a very cold room that's 25 or 26 degrees, and you take some actions, and it goes up 1 degree and 1 degree and another degree, and you're 20, 29, you're 30, and the ice cube is still frozen solid on the table, right? But all of a sudden, you wind up taking that one action that gets you to 32 degrees, and the ice cube begins to melt. You don't know, because sometimes it's not visible to you as to what steps are you taking and how many of those steps you need to take before that you've reached that tipping point where that ice cube begins to melt. I thought that was pretty powerful in terms of creating these habits and these steps, working on that process to achieve the goal. In corporate language or in organizational speak, a lot of organizations, from the goals that they have, will wind up creating a strategic plan, or they call it strategic planning at the organizational level. For individuals, I usually work with them on their own individual. You call it a strategic plan, but call it a development plan for leaders, so that they actually have to map out what it is that they're going to do, what are the actions or the initiatives they're going to launch, what are the habits that they're going to form in order to stepwise get to their goal. What's your experience with strategic planning?
Yeah, that this is an interesting perspective, John. I'm going to think back to I started my PhD about 7 years ago. I ultimately didn't end up finishing it, which I hope to go back and do it someday. But that's a topic for another day. But I was at Bowling Green when I started working on my PhD, and I was working in the Department of Education, doing a little bit of side work for one of my professors there. And it was interesting to me because I think universities do this incredibly well. I started diving deep into a lot of universities. They all have an overall encompassing strategic plan for the entire university, and then it's broken down per department. And all those goals are aligned with the vision and the mission of what the university is ultimately trying to do. And I think some of the best companies in the world have this very clear strategic plan that has got vision, mission, objectives, all their strategy tied in, how they're going to do certain things. And then it's broken down and divided amongst departments. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody is aligned, understands the vision and mission, understands their role within the organization, what it
Yeah.
is that they need to do each and every day to accomplish success.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I was working with actually, I was working with a university recently where we're helping to create the strategic plan. And again, because it's this longer term, maybe aspirational vision, you need to have a stepwise uh, plan, if you will, on how you're going to achieve that. So the strategic planning was about, well, what initiatives do we, what, first of all, where do we want to go? What do we want to achieve? But then what are we going to do in order to achieve that? I think that we'll get to this in a little bit, but the common reason why people fail with their plans is that they have great aspiration, but they have no plan to get there. And as a consultant, I was helped a lot of clients build that plan in order to achieve whatever objective or whatever goal that they had. So in addition, so there's this sort of goal setting processes. I know that you're probably familiar with SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. I find that to be a pretty decent technique in terms of the detail, right? If you have a specific action you want to take or a specific objective you have, to use that to kind of flesh out the details.
Yeah, I think this is really really important when you're trying to work on your personal goals or your professional goals. It doesn't matter what you're working on. They have to be smart, right? They've got to be the specific, right? You got to know exactly what it is that you're looking to achieve. they've got to be measurable, right? You want to look at them over a specific amount of time, whether that be daily for your short-term goals, weekly, whatever it is, your long-term goals, monthly. But they've got to be measurable, something that you're constantly looking at and grading yourself on. They've got to be achievable. If I told you, John, that as a 38-year-old male right now, that it was my goal to be a major league baseball player and be the best of all time, that's probably not going to happen because I haven't swung a baseball bat in 15 years, right? So that's not a realistic goal or a relevant goal. And they've got to be time bound. You've got to really put specific timetable on when you're going to achieve your goal, when you're looking to accomplish that goal, and you've got to stick to it, and your actions need to lead to that time frame of when you want to accomplish the goal. So every goal you set should have smart objectives behind it.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful for a lot of our listeners, Al. If they can use the SMART framework, there's some elements of grace in the sense of not achieving everything. I think in a corporate environment, it as you mentioned before, it kind of keeps everybody on one page in terms of how you're moving forward toward the goal. But as an individual, right, it works in the same way, right? It's got to be something that you can see the measurable. If it's losing weight or it's running consistently, or it's learning is your objective, or helping to achieve a greater employee engagement in the workplace. All of these things are things that you have to really think about how that's going to be measurable. And the idea that you mentioned about achievable, just another element that I think is kind of a common downfall for a lot of people, is that they set these goals that the organization doesn't believe in. They don't. There's one thing to be aspirational. It's another thing just to be pie in the sky, right? You have to have something that there's some tether to reality, that it can happen. Or perhaps it's just that you set a shorter term goal for the next 3 to 5 years, and you might become a baseball player, the oldest baseball player at 50, to go into the majors. But it's a matter of having those timetables that make sense.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the kind words there, John. I do appreciate it.
I'm rooting for you, Al. Rooting for you. Okay, so I think a lot of our listeners are really interested in the next piece, Al, and that is about what are some of the common mistakes that people make in the goal setting process.
Yeah, well, we talked a lot about the why, and again, I think that's the biggest downfall on why people struggle to achieve their goals. I really think that they don't have that why aligned with the goal that they're creating. And I think when we look at a long-term goal, I think it's very difficult, John, for people to stay focused, to stay disciplined on, you mentioned the book you just read, Atomic Habits, right? The habits that you need to do, the actions that you have to take day in, day out to achieve a goal that you might not see the end result in 5 to 7 years, right? I think that those are the most common mistakes and pitfalls that people fall into. Not having that why aligned with their goal, and really struggling on staying focused on the daily actions um, to see a long-term goal be successful.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with your point there. In some cases, we don't give ourselves maybe more short-term measures to be able to tie to the longer-term goal, because 3 years is a long time to wait to say I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to stop smoking, or I'm going to be a continuous learner. You have to have some incremental steps that people can look at and say I'm making progress, right? I can identify that I'm making progress.
Yeah.
The other thing that I see with a lot of folks is this unwillingness to set, I would say, stretch goals, because there's so much fear out there about missing a goal, not achieving it, like, oh, I'm a failure. And it just leads to a cycle of doubt and beating yourself up as an individual. But, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective too. I agree with you 100%, John. And the reason why, when you bring that up, um, I love that you bring that up though, because if you think about it, it's a lot easier to just not set a goal and strive and push for it than to work your butt off for day in, day out for years, and to have that, again, that potential that you might not hit that goal. But again,
Mhm.
That's why I always fall back to enjoy the process. Really enjoy the process. If your goal is tied in with your why, then you're going to have meaning behind what you're doing, and you've got to enjoy the steps that you're doing to get to that end result. Right? It's the
Mhm.
process that a lot of times might be more fun than the victory of hitting that goal.
Yeah, and we all have so many different things that are happening in our lives, right? Every day, since the beginning of the year, when you're sitting in your on your sofa, maybe waiting for the next football game, and you're thinking about what your resolutions are. That's an easy time, right? But then you get into January, and all of a sudden, there's your competitor has basically increased their ad campaign, or there's some employees have quit, or there's some turbulence in your environment. We're still dealing with the economy. There's external and internal events that tend to throw people off track. Um, and I think that one of the things that people don't do is they don't, the goal is set, and they're so worried about maybe their commitment to the goal, that they don't allow themselves some grace to adapt and to maybe deal with some of the things that come up in their life. Let's say that there's a thunderstorm outside, and you normally go running in the morning. Well, maybe you can run in the afternoon. Maybe you can do an indoor workout. Maybe you can ride your stationary bike for a while, so you get your exercise in. But you give yourself some grace, and this flexibility to deal with the whatever comes.
Yeah, you got to be able to adapt to change and be able to pivot when you have to, right? Not everything is going to go smoothly. There's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be challenges that are met, and to your point, you got to be flexible, and you got to be able to adjust. That's the part of being a great leader and focusing hard on those goals.
Yeah, and I think that what you mentioned earlier, just this idea that you're going to do a review with your goals periodically to make sure that they're still the ones that you want to achieve. Again, goal setting and strategic planning for an organization, as well as for individuals, should be really focused on the future, and not something that you can accomplish tomorrow.
Yeah.
So each of these things can, you will, even though my goals, my personal strategic plan hasn't changed all that much for a number of years, I do still look at it and reflect on what I'm doing in my life, and periodically to say, am I on track for achieving the goals in my strategic plan that I have for myself?
Yeah, John, I mean, that's a great point. If goals were easy and they were meant to be accomplished overnight, I don't think there'd be any joy in it, right? That's why I keep going back to enjoy the process, enjoy the steps that you have to take to achieve potential success.
Okay, so we started talking about it, but what are the strategies for staying focused? This is the meat of what our listeners probably tuned in today. So what are the strategies for staying focused?
Stay focused. So obviously, I've talked a ton about the why, so I won't dip in there. I think everybody understands how passionate I am about your why and making sure it's tied in with your goals. Um, One of the good things that I think you need to do, John, you've talked a little bit about people that want to develop a healthy lifestyle. And we all should want that ultimately. But if you want to lose weight, if somebody has a goal to lose 50 pounds, that might take a full calendar year for you to lose 50
Mhm.
pounds. The reason people struggle, in my opinion, to lose those 50 pounds is again because of what I talked about, is that it takes a while. It takes daily habits to get to
Mhm.
that your end goal. In my opinion, the best thing that people can do is, on a long-term goal especially, give yourself little victories, give yourself
Mhm.
wins. So if we want to look at losing weight, maybe you've been fantastic, you've exercised, you've had healthy meals for 3 straight weeks, and you've lost 6 pounds. Well, give yourself your favorite candy bar. That's okay. So little things like that. If you're striving towards a long-term goal, I think you have to create little victories and rewards for
Mhm.
yourself throughout that journey that create that excitement for you to keep going and keep fighting.
Yeah, I think acknowledging, and as the leader, when you're in the workplace, right? Uh, there are goals for the year. There may be a 3-year plan for the organization, but it's important to acknowledge your team for those small wins as well, right? It keeps the motivation going. It keeps the excitement, and people can tangibly say, "Hey, yeah, we did achieve that step, and it's just one step toward our goal, but we achieved that step." So there might be an end of the month party or a midweek party for having accomplished a step along the way, along the pathway to get there.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I think is really helpful for leaders, Al, is this idea of being mindful, right? And practicing mindful techniques, whether that be meditation or just reflection or perhaps journaling. It helps to take that time to kind of reflect on the progress that you're making and the steps that you're taking to remind again yourself the why. Why am I doing this? What am I hoping to achieve? What are the benefits I'm going to achieve? But what are the steps that I'm taking and how am I feeling about that at this particular moment? Are we, and are there adjustments that need to be, maybe jot down in the journal? What are those adjustments that need to be made?
Yeah, this is an area I'm always very passionate about too, because I think some of the sharpest people in the world are the ones that have the most success, I should say, are the ones that really focus on ensuring that their mind is very sharp. And there's things that I think you can do for that. One of the things that I like to do, and I got this from John Gordon, who is another leadership coach out there, but he's very, very big on gratitude. And so one thing that I've started to do in the past year is really focus every single day on writing down one thing that I'm grateful for. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that helps put a lot of things in perspective. And the other thing that I think everybody should do is really find a 15 to 20-minute period in their day to have some quiet downtime where there is absolutely no noise whatsoever. I know it's easier said than done, especially with me having 3 children under the age of 6, but we've got to find some time for ourselves so that we can unwind
Mm-hmm.
and really just have our peaceful time. We can use it to reflect. I really am big. I don't do it all the time, but I'm big on going for a walk in nature. I think nature has great benefits um, to people's mindset, and so
Mm-hmm.
those are just a couple little practices that I think are important.
Those are great suggestions, Al. Thank you. And then accountability strategies, I think, is another thing that I think really works. Having a partner, somebody who's going to hold you in check. Maybe that's your wife or your colleague at work, or it could be a coach. It could be a teacher or a mentor. But somebody's going to kind of hold you to it. This whole idea of being public about your goals and what you're trying to achieve and making sure that it's very transparent is powerful.
It is very powerful, and I think this is one thing that a lot of people miss too, John. And you know, I think sometimes people get afraid to make their goals known to the world. But one example I'll share is this was probably about 2 or 3 months ago. I was watching a Red Wings hockey game when they were in Anaheim playing the Ducks. And the general manager of Anaheim used to be a Red Wings hockey player and former executive. Pat Verbeek is his name. I believe he's in his first or second year as general manager. And probably 10 or 15 years ago, Kenny Holland is the general manager of the Red Wings. And he was talking with Pat Verbeek. Pat Verbeek was no longer in hockey, not a player, not working at all in the front office or anything. And he asked what he wanted to do with his life. And Pat Verbeek told Ken Holland, he said, I want to be a general manager of a hockey team. And Ken Holland asked him, have you told anybody? And he said, no. And that when I was watching that hockey game, that stuck out to me. They were talking to him during the first or second intermission. It really stuck out to me because I thought to myself, sometimes we don't tell other people what our goals are. And we have to, we need to, because there's other people that could help us accomplish our dreams and our goals and what we're setting out for. And then when we look for an accountability partner, it's got to be the right person. It can be a coach, absolutely. That's definitely a best practice. But if you have somebody that you're aligned with that strives towards excellence, that's a person that you should probably reach out to hold you accountable. And you guys could set weekly meetings, bi-weekly meetings, whatever it is. But that person helps keep you on track towards your actions to hit those goals.
And why do you think, Al? What do you think the reasons are for somebody who has a passion, a goal for themselves, but they don't go public with it?
So that's a great point you bring up too. So if somebody says I want to be the general manager of an NHL hockey team, that's a very lofty goal, right? So I think a lot of times people who are motivated and driven by goals have goals that are hard to obtain, which is fine, which is totally normal. But I think that they're afraid to put it out there because they're afraid of what might come back to them and what people might say. That's too hard. You're not meant to do that. I wouldn't focus your time and energy on that. That's why I think people are afraid to share their goals. But that's why, you know, don't worry about what other people think. And then in my opinion, again, when you enlist a friend who's going to be your accountability partner, it's got to be the right one. It really
Mhm.
does. It's important.
Yeah, I think having that accountability is important. Um, you mentioned this idea that you want to have a time of reflection. I think that, writing down your accomplishments or tracking your progress toward a goal create some of that. Maybe that's something you could be doing in that 15 minutes where you're, or at least having a habit of recording the progress along the way. I know that, I'm currently in this mode where I'm trying to manage my blood pressure a little bit. So every day I track it. It doesn't change incrementally every day. And I know that. I know it's not, but I track it every day. That's the habit that I've created so that I create awareness for myself that this is my goal and here's the progress that I'm making. Uh, one more story, I think, with the idea of stating your goals. One of the things I always did when I was working and I was coaching and mentoring a lot of young leaders was to ask them what their ambition was. What's your dream? What's your big idea? Because I think it's important for people to be able to get out in front of that, and to let people know, like, how are you going about implementing that? So it's one thing to say, hey, I think that I want to be the general manager because I think I have the skills, but I also think that could produce a very successful team and a franchise, right? But the idea is that, if you're not telling people about it, you're not taking steps toward it, you're not managing your network and getting others. People are very forgiving. People are very helpful in your life. And if they're not, honestly, there may be one or two out there that are going to judge you, but for the most part, if you tell people what your goal is, there's sort of an automatic, people lean in to wanting to help you to achieve it, even if they don't know how. They're saying, this person has a goal. I want to help them to get to where they want to be. So what are we going to do about it? How am I going to be able to help?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you hear and see that passion behind somebody when they're talking about their goals, it's only natural that people are going to want to gravitate towards that person and they're going to want to help in some way if they can.
Yeah. So, Al, this has been a terrific discussion today, and I think we covered a lot of different topics. We talked about goals and what goals are and what the benefits of goals are. I think we recognize that there's enough benefits that we should be setting those goals. Talked about professional and personal goals, and then the why that should go behind it. How do you get powerfully connected to your goals by connecting them to either your own personal mission or core purpose, but if you're in an organization, how do you make sure that your goals are connected to that purpose as well? We talked a little bit about the tracking techniques, and we even covered, like, what are the pitfalls and what would you suggest? So I think it's been a great um, discussion that we've had, and I think it's going to be helpful for our leaders. Anything else you'd like to add as we start to wrap up the session?
Well, I loved chatting with you, John. I always enjoy talking with you, and I can't thank you enough for bringing me on. I thought we had a powerful discussion around leadership and the why of goal setting and how people can focus on hitting their goals. And again, I can't thank you for making this happen and bringing me on to discuss it. It's something I'm truly passionate about and I love. So it's always wonderful talking with you, John.
It comes through, Al, definitely. So to all of our listeners, I'd just really like to invite you to reflect on your goal setting, both personally and professionally. How are you doing so far? We're in the middle of February here, and just to, even though you can start setting goals at any point in time, I know many of you set your annual goals. Reflecting on how those goals, your own mission, your own purpose, your core purpose, and how your goals are meeting or aligning with your core purpose, and also the values that you have for yourself. Are those goals aligned, and are you finding the passion to continue? So Al, I know that you're an executive coach, but I want to make sure that people are able to reach you if they would like to. Do you have contact information you can share?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, John. I'm on Facebook. I've got a Facebook page where I share lots of information on leadership. LinkedIn as well is a big opportunity where you can connect with me. Happy to field any phone calls. My cell phone is 586-344-9864. I've got a website as well, a Fragnoli. That's Fragnoli .intelligentleadershipec.com. That's my website. You can visit anytime. Would love to connect with any leaders out there and help in any way possible.
Yeah, thank you, Al. And I'm sure that you'll have some phone calls pretty soon. All right. Well, thank you so much, and appreciate everybody listening in. We've got our next podcast will be out soon, and we'll have more details on that later. But we will put the details of both for Al and myself, the contact information in the notes of this podcast. So you can, if you forget or you didn't have a pen ready when he mentioned it, you'll be able to grab it there. All right. Well, so thank you so much for listening in.
Thank you, John.
Well, that was a terrific discussion with executive coach Al Fragnoli with regard to goal setting, as well as how to avoid losing focus on those goals over time. So I'd like to encourage all you leaders, all the listeners out there, to really think about how are you incorporating your personal mission, purpose, and values into your goal setting practice, and whether or not you're really connected to those goals in a meaningful way. We're going to include the details, contact details for this podcast in the notes that you'll see wherever your favorite platform to listen. And also, I want to make sure that that you add your own commentary or your thoughts on this podcast. We always want to continue to grow and to improve the work that we're doing. So if you leaders out there have any comments, suggestions, or just would like to say hello, please add those notes or reach out to either Al or myself. We always appreciate good reviews for the podcast. All right. Well, until next time, thank you. Take care.